All right, when you finish building your box and you've got those 4 sides attached, now what you want to do is turn your box to the side and make sure you have your coils on the inside. You need coils going up every vertical corner, and then you need coils along all 4 sides at the base on the inside. Then you're going to turn your box over and you're going to start to refine the outside. So you don't want to see a crack or a seam where those slabs got connected. So this is all a part of step 4 when we smooth. So there are a variety of ways you can go about smoothing your clay. Sometimes your finger is just the best tool just to start to smear the clay over the top of that crack. But sometimes using a wooden tool is another good option. So if you're going to use a wooden tool, it needs to be a tool that has a straight edge to it. You don't want to work with a round edge, and you definitely do not want to work with one of the wooden tools that has teeth on the end, like this tool. This tool's got teeth. That is not going to do any smoothing. That's just going to carve texture lines. All right, so what I could do is, using the smooth side, I could put my hand inside the box to support that wall, and I can start scraping the outer edge with light hand pressure. So I'm not pressing hard when I do this, but you can see that just by scraping over the top of that seam, it just smooths that out, and that crack now disappeared. So you're going to want to do that on all 4 sides of your box. Leather hard clay is better to work with. If your clay is soft, then it's going to be more difficult because you're going to start bending the wall when you do this. You also want to look on these edges for cracks in between and start to fill those in. Now, sometimes you might see that you have a hole in between. So like right here, that's a hole that no matter how much I scrape, that hole's still going to be there. So if you've got a little hole like that, you're going to want to take just a little bit of soft clay and press that soft clay into the hole. Again, I have my hand on the inside supporting the wall so I don't push that wall over when I smear that clay into the hole. And then I'm just going to kind of reshape things. So once you have rotated your box on all 4 sides and you have blended away those seams, then you're ready for your lid. So this wall I would really need to do a lot more refining. This process is called refining, where you're not necessarily building anything, but you're just really taking the time to pay attention to the details. That's called refinement, where you are trying to make things as neat and smooth as possible with this particular type of assignment. Okay, so then before you can do your lid, you have to check your wall height. So now I'm going to set my box on the table, and now what I'm going to do is kind of lean down low so that my eye level is the same level as the box, and I'm going to look at the height of the wall. So for our video purposes, I'm going to turn this box so that we can see this top edge of the box. And what I want to look for is the height of my walls. Are they the same height, or did the clay get cut wrong, or did it stretch as you build? So what you're going to want to do is trim off the tall pieces. So on my box right here, if you can see it in the video, this wall is taller than this wall. So I'm going to need to cut that piece so it's more the same height all the way around. So I'm just going to gently use my knife tool to trim that. If your clay is leather hard, this is easiest. If your clay is too soft, then your clay won't cut evenly. It will just kind of pull the clay and stretch the clay instead of cut the clay. If you aren't sure how to do this, or if you're nervous, you can just ask me and I can come trim your walls for you. So when you see that your walls are the same height, then you're ready to create your lid. So the first thing that you need to do is get your large stencil that we began with and test it to see if it still matches your box, because as you work, your walls might have stretched, and if that stencil truly does not line up on all four sides, then you cannot use this stencil to make your lid piece. Now, I sculpted mine precisely so I knew it would still be the same size as my stencil. So what I would then do is roll out another slab of clay. I would cut that out, and that's going to become the lid piece. So I have already done that step here. So now, when I put that lid on, it should sit flat on top because I cut my walls to be the same height, and it should line up on all four sides to be a precise lid. If you look at it from the side, there should not be gaps between the top of the wall and the lid if you cut your walls really at the same height. So if you're stretched and this stencil does not match anymore, you have to make your lid a little bit differently. What you're going to do is roll out a slab of clay that is bigger than the size of your box. Once it's finished, you're going to take your box, you're going to turn your box upside down so that the top of the box is touching the clay, and it has to fit on that clay slab. If the clay slab's not big enough, add more clay, re-roll it to make it big enough. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a tool to trace the edge of my box on all four sides. I'm not cutting through the clay yet. I'm just tracing with a tool. Then I'm going to take the box off, set that to the side. Now I'm going to finish cutting that with the knife tool, and I'm just going to cut right through those lines that I traced. And then you have to remember that this slab gets turned upside down because the top of the box was touching it in this position. So if that's really going to be the lid that fits, you would have to turn this box right side up, flip this slab over, and now that really is a match for the top of your box. So that's how you would make that lid piece. Then what you're going to do is keep your lid, but you're going to cover up the box. You do not want this box sitting out in the open because clay that's exposed to air is drying out. We don't want your box to dry out before you've finished the lid. So get out your board with your rag on it, set your box on top, spray that a couple times, fold that fabric over the top and put that back on your chair, get it off the table. Okay, here is where we are using your rough draft design or your pattern design for this clay project. So I made you a photocopy. You should have the photocopy here to work with. So what you're going to do is get a Crayola marker. It has to be Crayola. It cannot be a Sharpie. And you are going to outline the designs of your pattern with that marker. You're not coloring anything in. All you're doing is just outlining. And it does not matter which marker color you work with. I pulled out the dark colors, so as long as you've got a Crayola marker from the container where I showed your class to get the marker, then it doesn't matter what color you're using. Now, if the marker's dry, then that is a problem. You have to get one that's going to dry easily. Okay, as soon as I'm done tracing, put my cap on my marker. Now what I'm going to do is print this design onto the top side of my lid. So you have to remember which side's the top. So this is my top side, and this is what I'm going to be printing on. So I'm going to take that cut piece of slab, and as best as I can, I'm going to center it over the top of the drawing. Then I'm just going to use light hand pressure to pat that to get it to stick to the paper. My other hand, I'm going to slide under the paper, and I'm going to sandwich this between my two hands. I'm going to flip it over so the clay is now touching the table. And now what I'm going to do is massage the paper. I'm just rubbing the paper from the back side. And what's happening right now is the marker is leaving a print onto your clay. So I'm going to peel that back just a corner on each side to make sure it's printing. If it's not printing, I'm going to massage it a little more. And when I pull that off, I have a marker print of this design. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to carve this with my ink pen. So get an ink pen out of your cup. You're not using it for the ink. You're using it for the end of the pen that's going to make an indentation in the clay. So I'm just going to use regular hand pressure to draw over my marker lines to make a carving. And the reason we're doing this, Crayola marker is washable. This marker is going to fade and evaporate off the surface of the clay. When you spray the clay, it's really going to make the marker evaporate from the water. So we don't want our marker to disappear before we're done using the design of the pattern. So that's why we draw into the marker. And again, I'm just using regular hand pressure. I'm not pushing very hard to do my carving. Okay, when you finish, you should see every line carved from that ink pen. Then what you're going to do is set this off to the side on your project board, because now what we're going to do is roll out and cut another slab of clay that matches your lid. So if you could use the stencil, use the stencil. If you need to get your box out, turn your box upside down, trace the box to get a match for your lid. Or rather, you could take this piece, use that as a stencil. Set that piece on top of your second slab, cut around it so it's precise. Now what I'm going to do is make a second print. I'm going to take my slab, put it on top of my marker, press with my hand to get it to stick to the paper, turn it over, and I'm going to massage. Okay, so we're going to use one of these slabs to be the lid to your project. The other slab is what we're going to cut out and attach onto the top surface. So I like to use the one that's more dry to be the base or the bottom. So this one for me is more dry. This one is really soft and flexible, so I'm going to cut out this one. So what I'm going to do is get my knife tool, and I'm just going to cut out a piece at a time. Really, maybe I should have cut from the drier one, but too late now. Okay, this piece should now match this shape that I already had carved onto that section. So now I'm ready to attach that. So I have to get my water bowl and a toothbrush. So we're going to score and slip. You're going to brush inside that design where that marker was. You're going to brush the bottom edge that's touching it. And then you're going to stick. What you just did was score slip. Now we stick. And you want to make sure you press hard enough to make it attach, but you don't want to press so hard that you squish it and change the shape. Then we're going to smooth the extra slip away. I could do that with my finger. I could do that with a wooden tool. But what I don't want to use is the toothbrush, because that's not going to smooth it away. That's just going to add more slip. Okay. All right, so then I'm going to proceed to continue to cut out my shapes from one piece of clay and attach it to the other piece of clay right on top of that design. You always have to use your toothbrush, score, slip, stick, smooth anytime you attach two pieces of clay. So now I'm going to brush here. You want to make sure you see those scratch marks. The bristles have to scratch that clay. Stick. And then make sure that your shapes are right on the edge. And then I can go about smoothing. Wipe off the extra slip. Kind of clean up around the edges of this. So, that's how you go about building the rest of the top of the lid, cutting your 3D pieces out, attaching them onto the other piece. So, at cleanup time, when it's time to stop and clean up, you always want to store your lid next to your box. So open up your rag, get that box out. Put your box on one edge of your board. Then you want to put your flat piece of clay next to the box on the board, because that flat piece of clay should always be on the board. Then you might need to stack your second piece of clay. So you're going to want to get a piece of paper towel, place it on top of the flat slab, then the slab that has your 3D pieces, set that on top of there, spray the clay, spray all the sides of the box, even spray the sides of the fabric so it's folding over the top to protect that. Then you're just going to stick that entire project inside your plastic bag, wrap that up airtight, and then you'll take that out next class and continue to build what you have left to finish the lid.